Good evening. I'm Erin Brooks. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Engagement and Outreach here in District 214, as well as the Executive Director of our foundation. And I'm pleased to be here tonight to welcome you to the third presentation in our 5-part Facts Matter series. This series is the product of a tremendous, I think, partnership between the Daily Herald and our Community Education Department. We've already had compelling conversations on fake news, on bias in the news, and more, and I know tonight's discussion on photography and video will be outstanding as well. I do want to mention we have 2 more, correct, Facts Matter presentations coming up, so mark your calendars if you haven't already. We have How Does a News Organization Work on October 17th, and the First Amendment as a Protector of Democracy on October 24th. Both of those are free, as this one was. Make sure you also pick up a copy of our Community Education Program Guide outside if you liked this program to find out some more opportunities. A couple notes on tonight. The presentation is going to be interactive, as I understand it, and allow for questions and answers. So we do have a student here, I think, to help with the microphone as needed. We also provide opportunities to submit questions on note cards. So if you have those and want to submit one, you can kind of wave it in the air. Someone will grab it from you. If you need one, raise your hand and someone will be there to help you out. We kindly request that you just have respectful conversation. That's been the case every time, and I know it will be tonight. With that, I want to introduce tonight's presenter. Photo editor Jeff Knox could not join us. He's out sick, so unfortunately, but we're very pleased to have with us Jim Bauman, Vice President and Managing Editor of the Daily Herald. I'm a little biased in that I used to actually work at the Daily Herald, so I know the caliber of knowledge you're going to glean from Jim, and let me tell you, it's going to be tremendous. So with that, welcome, Jim, and thank you so much.
I'm going to need you all to smile and squitch them together here. I need a... All righty. Very good, I'll post that on social media. Show of hands. Oh, first of all, Jeff Knox is a great photo director, and he would have been a great comic foil to me tonight. That was his purpose for being here. He is not here. So I need you to laugh at my jokes. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, good. Very good. I'll try. I need a show of hands. Anybody see something in your Facebook feed over the weekend about Facebook cloning everybody's accounts? Quite a few of you. I got it too. Did you pass it along to anybody? Thank you. All right. That was a hoax, and the same wording was put out there 6 years ago, which is, you know, these things have quite a shelf life. Thank you, Teresa. Who saw a Facebook post about a red-haired 7-year-old who went missing in downstate Illinois? That got passed around to me twice by people. This girl went missing in 2013. She was killed by her uncle the next day, and he's in prison, I think. And now the family has to relive the horror of this whole thing because it's all over social media. And it's not harmless when you pass along bogus stuff like this. It may seem like it, but I feel terrible for her family right now. We had a little technical difficulty this morning, and hopefully this is fixed. Aha. Very good. You can't always believe what you see, but what you can believe is what your brain tells you, so use it. Fake news is a lot easier to disseminate through video and through photo because you kind of take it at face value. Your brain stops working at some point. to determine whether there's any truth to it. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the images we see every day in the news. The news is a lot different today than it used to be. People read newspapers and TV and watched TV, read magazines, and listened to the radio. Now we do that and so much more. 30, 40 years ago, we kind of trusted everything we saw and read, didn't we? Because there was an expectation that news operations were on the up and up. Today, there's everything across the spectrum. This is stuff we've talked about the first couple of weeks in this program. But there is reason to believe less of what you see and hear today. As I mentioned earlier, it is important to use your brain and not just your eyeballs. There is just so much baloney out there. It's really human nature to believe what you see. It is tougher to accept something that challenges your belief system. It is good. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. We'll see a lot of examples of that today. I am a professional skeptic. I get paid good money to be skeptical about everything. And as a news consumer, you have to be skeptical too to help filter out the junk. It's bad to be cynical, and I'm not sure how many people know the real difference between being a cynic and being a skeptic, but it's not very productive to be a cynic. So try to avoid that. And then one more refresher here on what fake news is. Stuff that is made up out of whole cloth. We'll see some examples of that. News that is, you have the germ of truth in it, but then you stretch it all out of shape to make a lie out of it. Stuff that's taken out of context. That could be an opinion that is cast out there as news. The false stories like, we're really going to miss Sally Field. You see that pop every once in a while. Or I can't remember what other celebrity allegedly died recently, but that's just clickbait. As Diane pointed out last week, I think, that's some kid in Macedonia trying to make a buck. Satire stories. There are columnists at large newspapers who write satire that people share, and eventually you don't really know what the context of that is, and it is satirical and shouldn't be taken as fact. Yep, I hit everything there. So, back to FDR. You pointed out that Lexus did not exist 44 years ago. What else tells you that this is kind of screwy? He couldn't drive. That's true. He probably wouldn't drive a Japanese car if he could. It's very simple. You know, Diane stole one of my slides from last week. I had Abe Lincoln talking about, not everything you read on the internet is true. So I had to come up with this, and I did so in 3 minutes. I found a picture of him. I made up the quote. Hilarious, isn't it? And I found the Lexus insignia. In 3 minutes, I was done. So this stuff is really easy to do. What you can do is put the quote in Google, find out who said it first, whether anybody said it at all. That'll help figure it out. I once saw something about how in George Carlin's last days he found Jesus. He never found Jesus. He was an atheist to the end. At any rate, this is critical thinking stuff. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can create stuff. You can just make it up out of whole cloth. Anybody know who William Safire is? New York Times columnist, kind of the father of grammar in the modern age. Well, the former father of grammar. He sent this, he put out this tweet about 10 minutes before the program started, and I immediately thanked him for the endorsement here. I write Grammar Moses, by the way, on Sunday. So it was great that he thought of me. Now, if I gave District 214 my program this morning, he probably didn't write a tweet 10 minutes ago. And I came up with this. I went on a website that you can create a tweet with anybody's name on it. So yeah, I guess I'm promoting my own column. So do read it. It's fun. Oh, and he died long before I started writing this column too. Thank you for laughing. Here's another one. Diane alluded to this, but I thought you'd want to see the actual. This is amazing. This is really fine, scammy work that this person came up with. So Emma Gonzalez was one of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas kids who's really gained national notoriety for arguing for changes in gun laws. And I think she did a magazine cover where she tore up this shooting target, and somebody created the Constitution, which kind of painted her in a bad light, but it's very convincing. Only in my dreams is this true. Yeah, I came up with this in about 2.5 minutes. I actually timed myself. And that includes composing the sentence there. But if you want to believe that chocolate's good for you, or red wine's good for you, or coffee is good for you, you might as well believe that cheeseburgers are good for you too. There are sites all over the place. You can just Google. I'm not providing links for you because I don't want you to do it yourself. But you can Google, how do I fake a national news site? How do I do all these things? And they're all right there. It's quite a marketplace. This clearly, well, no, this was real, if you can believe that. This is just the other day. I don't know how the real story got in there, Pete. Another way to fake a photo is to combine different images to create one. In this case, we've got the world's largest snake, 134 feet long. Last estimate was that it killed 273 people in Indonesia. Except it's a regular sized snake. And people mashed up two images to create the illusion that these very tiny Indonesian men were hanging around the snake. If there was a man-eating snake of that size near me, I would not be looking the other way. The largest snake, just so you learn something tonight, is about 30 feet long. All right, take a good long look at this. I wish the picture were a little bit larger, but I wanted you to be able to see the whole front page. Real newspaper. The threat of being fired that keeps these guys honest, am I right? Yeah, it's dedication to craft, it's producing real life in 2 dimensions. This is the Hartford Courant. Yes, it's a big newspaper. Not a fake paper. Not a fake paper. Big ass picture. Because it's a compelling image. So here's what this is all about. The photographer who was working for a monolithic newspaper company that I won't talk about was in Iraq shooting pictures, and he shot these two images that you see at the very top. In one case, the guy carrying the child is looking away, and in the other case, the Marine is looking the other way. Well, that doesn't make for a very compelling human interaction picture, so he combined the two pictures. He was fired right away. They called him in Iraq and said, "You're gone." So he is now shooting weddings, where photo manipulation is just fine, thank you very much, if it makes the bride look better. But let me see if I can do this. This guy right here, see his back? His back is right there. And this guy's head, I'm sorry I'm shaky. This guy's head is that guy. The arrows kind of point to those two things. Now, the guy didn't work directly for the Hartford Courant, but the Hartford Courant photo editor looked at this and thought, wow, that's a really good picture, except it's not real. So he complained. That's when the guy got fired. He said clearly this image was manipulated. But the guy, the photographer did it. He's under a great deal of pressure, as we all are in war situations. And he thought that having the Marine and the guy looking at each other would make for a much more compelling picture. And it does. But it's not real. It does not reflect reality. Misidentification is like probably the easiest thing to...
Jim?
Yes,
Can you
Pete?
back up and talk about a little bit about what we are allowed to do with photos?
Steve, want to talk about this a little bit? We'll see if your explanation matches mine later. This is a test.
Well, basically, we're allowed to do what we used to do in the darkroom, which is, lighten up certain areas, crop. That's pretty much it. If you couldn't do it in the darkroom, you're not supposed to try to do it digitally.
Right. You don't want to make a super dramatic sky out of kind of a dreary afternoon, that sort of thing. You want to make things look like it looked when you were looking through the viewfinder. And that's very subtle changes. How's that, Pete? Was that good? Okay, good. Okay, misidentification. The really easy thing to do, it catches a lot of people off guard, even if it's done poorly. Does that look anything like Christine Blasey Ford? I don't think so. I didn't make this one up. This was on the interwebs. I believe it was Nation in Distress that put this one out. This also is not Christine Blasey Ford, and it looks nothing like her. I don't know who fell for this, but I guess anybody standing next to George Soros must be a war criminal. This woman is actually a human rights activist. I got this picture off of Snopes. They tracked her down. Here's another one. Not every bald woman is Emma Gonzalez. Okay, so if you are predisposed to thinking she's an awful person, you might believe this. But this is Britney Spears when she kind of raved out 10 years ago. Again, it doesn't look anything like her. again. This is, you know, guys with kind of questionable experiences with women, hanging out with Christine Blasey Ford or vice versa, but it's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is a fan of the Clintons and proud to be. She doesn't look anything like Christine Blasey Ford, so when you see something that just maybe looks a little off, it probably is. All right. I'm not sure this is going to come across very well. This is something that my brother-in-law sent me because I must be a radical leftist, and he's from Oklahoma. He doesn't check out his stuff. So this claims to be the Mexican border with Guatemala, which, by the way, is all jungle if you think about it. And shouldn't the United States be able to protect its border like they do with Guatemala? Because those Guatemalans, you can't trust them. Again, nation in distress. So, you can do a Google image search, a reverse image search, and find out where this picture originally came from. And it's the West Bank. The metadata on the photo. Photos are, once you post a picture online, it's there, right? If you post the same photo a couple years later, you can find different instances of where it has appeared before. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. Yeah. We all know Brett Kavanaugh likes beer. He said it 1,000 times, but, you know, his apron is a little bit askew, but those words are absolutely straight. So you know somebody just dropped that on there. That's worse than I would do. Okay, doctored photos. It's not just Macedonian kids trying to make money. It's not just idiots like me trying to have fun with you. It's, it's Time and Newsweek. This was their OJ cover, obviously. Time darkened him up to make him look more menacing here, and Newsweek played it straight. It's the same booking photo, absolutely same photo. And you know, when Steve mentioned you can tweak the exposure, you know, the lighting a little bit on something to make it look like it should look. Well, they kind of went overboard here. Why or how? They got a lot of blowback for that. They really did. But not to be outdone, Newsweek took this this Iowa mom of what was it? She had 7 kids or 19 kids, I don't remember. And Newsweek straightened her teeth out. The woman had really bad teeth. And Time magazine played it straight. So it's not like Time's always doing bad things and Newsweek's always doing good things. They both have had lapses. Yes. Digitally retouch. We
It's in computer graphics.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that any photo in any national publication is retouched.
You must read Playboy magazine, sir. Yes, the airbrushing became photoshopping. We hold accuracy very dear, right? So if we touch a photo in any way. It's to simply make it look like it looked like when it was shot. Yes.
If they retouch some of their photos, how does one know whether they don't retouch anything that's significant? Who's the judge of what's significant?
That is an imponderable. I don't know how to answer that question. We can't know. With the Associated Press, which we use a lot, if anything looks hinky to us, and I'll get into this later. If anything looks a little bit odd to us, we're not going to use it. Yes.
And obviously, it's not my purpose to attack him.
Yeah.
But he said in the dark room. Now, the fact of the matter is that you can go out to a resort and take a picture, and it's for an advertisement to come to sunny Arizona.
Yeah.
And the picture isn't sunny, and you can easily make it sunny.
Well, that's advertising. That's a different deal. That is advertising. And we do journalism. Whole different set of standards. I'll get into advertising a little bit later where there's something more significant than retouching. Yes. Advertising is purchased space. It is not journalism. The horse is on the ground and it's wheezing. Yeah. Yeah. The difference is what our photographers do and what the Associated Press does is journalism, and there's a certain set of standards there. Advertising is advertising. It's different. You advertise to make a product look better than it might actually be. So that's all I can say about that. We don't change it, no. No, we don't. It's an advertisement is an advertisement. And if it doesn't quite look like an advertisement, I put a label on it that says it's advertising. I want you to know the difference. Yeah.
Were photos able to be altered before technology like Photoshop or a variation of it?
You are perfect because anybody know what this picture's from? Kent State, very good, right in your wheelhouse. All right, very famous photo. Boom! Where did that pole come that's sticking out of her head? That is the original photo. This was not... In fact, I met the guy who was the roommate of the guy who shot this and won a Pulitzer. You don't take poles out of people's heads. You just don't do it. So that's something that we would have a really big problem with. So yes, there's a way to do that. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this slide. Has anybody seen this? This was circulating last year. What makes you laugh? He's got a bigger gut than I do. He also has a bigger gut than the president does. This is John Daly with President Trump's head on him. Uh-huh. Now, if you don't like President Trump, you might think, wow, that guy's a big fat whale. But, and the purpose of this was to make him look worse than he is. Well, no, I didn't say that the right way. The purpose of this was to embarrass him, okay? That's not cool. At least they took the cigarette out of his mouth, right? So what you can do here to kind of verify that is if you were just to isolate the gut, you can do a Google image search of that. You don't need the whole photo. Just take the part that was not, that you think might be real, and you could do a Google image search of that gut, and it'll come back and show you the picture on the right. That was very well done. All right. Diane alluded to signs being a problem. This is a really easy thing to fake. They have different websites with people holding signs, and you can fill it in with whatever you want to say. Again, a slide that she stole from me last week, but I found several examples of this being misused. An immigrant is taking my job, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. This, I talked about satire and how it's misused. Here's a prime example of how you can do that. You might post this to your husband's page or something like that, and then somebody on his Facebook feed sees it and shares it, and then all of a sudden nobody knows that it's satire anymore, and they think that Michelle is complaining about Melania in a derogatory fashion. Conspiracy theories. You saw last week about the spacesuit that was faked. It was not. Here's one I found, and this was kind of popular when John McCain was dying, and people wanted to, make him look bad. So they have him and Lindsey Graham standing with Osama bin Laden after a deep state fundraiser. So, what's wrong with this? Well, there's a tip-off that if you see this in a deep, this is taken after a deep state fundraiser, it's a pretty good tip-off that it's written by somebody who's putting out some propaganda. News sources, legit news sources, don't use deep state. Anyway, there's the original picture. It's Hamid Karzai, president of Afghanistan. A very good job of faking this picture, but you see a guy in a suit and a Middle Eastern get up here, and it makes the Osama thing look a little bit more real. Anyway, you could get a picture of, you could do a Google image search of part of this photo and find the real one. Okay, here's where political advertising kind of goes off the rails. In the spring, when Jeannie Ives was running for governor, very conservative Republican, and she was made to be in the pocket of Mike Madigan. Now, right off the bat, that ought to tell you there's something kind of screwy here. So the consultant who worked on this piece took some snippets from our editorial board meeting with Jeannie, and or it wasn't with our meeting, it was somebody else's, and I think she said she said that what did she say? Diane, do you remember what the assertion was? She was
saying that Governor Rauner had not worked hard enough to collaborate or cooperate with Madigan.
Anyway, you take the germ of truth and then you just stretch it like Play-Doh until it becomes she's a Mike Madigan henchwoman. Not really true. Very out of context. And of course, Show of hands, anybody getting a lot of mailers? Yeah, okay, me too. I could make a newspaper with those things. So any expression that Mike Madigan has ever made is in somebody's file, and they can make him look like the devil himself. Counting money, giving a thumbs. I don't know what he's doing in the one on the right, but he looks pretty devilish there. And of course, here I don't know what's going on. He and Mark Walker are digging Illinois' grave. Not reality. This is the difference between, and I don't think, say what you will about Mike Madigan, I don't think he's trying to dig a grave for the state of Illinois, and I don't think that candidate is either. So that's a context issue. This is a part of the program where Jeff would be very handy. So I'm going to need you guys to help me out here. These are photos that we got in the Associated Press feed from after the Kavanaugh hearing, and President Trump was talking about the whole thing. Starting with what I want to do here, because you all know how the whole day went, right? Which of these pictures would you consider for publication with a story like that? Who likes this one? Anybody? How about show of hands? That one's okay. That one's all right. How about this one? No. Anybody tell me why? Little smirky. How about this one? Oh, I know how you vote. This is a big fat no, because he looks goofy. He just looks goofy. This one, little angry. That's about right. This one, I'm not sure. He's playing basketball, ready to catch a medicine ball. This one, he's making a point. That's how he makes his points. This one, or this one. There are two in here that we reject right away, and we do this every day. These two. This is not after he was confirmed. I think this is while it was still going on. This is all about context. The story is about a contentious thing. He's a bit fired up. To have him all smiley or goofy looking, it just doesn't convey the context of the story. Here's another set. So, he's meeting with Macron from France. And this is the traditional, we got to shake hands to start the meeting, right? Oh, don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look. Okay. All right. Pretty standard, right? Ooh, what's going on there? Trump released first. Not a good thing. And he's looking kind of uninterested. This one, he's looking kind of, and he is bored. And then this one, pretty standard. Okay, I had a pretty good read of the room on 2 weeks ago when we were talking about bias. Is anybody comfortable telling me whether you are a Trump person or a non-Trump person? Trump people. Okay, we've got some Trump people and non-Trump people. Holy cow. Okay. Or neither, that's fine. Don't be a cynic. All right. We are very careful to make sure that we don't make people look stupid. The first week, John Lampinen showed a picture of Bob Bruder, who's the former Harper, former COD president, and he had his belly button showing, basically. Bad. We shouldn't have used it. I take the lumps for that one for sure. I wasn't thinking. we try not to make people look stupid. I try to put myself in the place of somebody who, would I like a picture of me with my gut hanging out? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. So I try to show that kind of respect to everybody who's in the paper. So if you think that we're always hunting down the worst picture of your candidate, it's not true. So, the Kavanaugh hearing, really emotional day from both of them, right? How do you portray that on the front page of the paper? I didn't think that showing one picture of one of them testifying, which is what most newspapers in the world did, was the right way to go. So we tried to show each one of them kind of going through the range of their emotions. To me, this is appropriate context. It shows you really the whole story of what happened there. Anybody think I did a bad job here? Okay, good. I'm taking all the credit from Neil Holdway, who suggested it. He's our night news editor. Yeah, exactly. We'll do the Brady Bunch next. All right. This is why you really came here, right? How to spot the fake? Ooh. Real or fake? Show of hands. Is it real? All right. That guy has inside knowledge. He's my boss. Okay. It's real. And this is a photo that Jeff Knox shot. Jeff is too sick to be here and bail me out, so I made him talk about this in a video, so Jeff is here in spirit. And play.
Sometimes a photo can seem too good to be true. It's difficult to be certain if a photo is genuine unless you shot it yourself. In this case, I did.
I made him
But there
say
are
that.
ways in which you can see whether or how a photo has been used before to determine its veracity. In this photo, the airplane is in perfect position over the moon during a lunar eclipse. Following the steps we just talked about, I can do a Google image search on the photo and find out that it's a Daily Herald photo and it's been used all over the country. You can't be 100% sure, but when you see the photo published in several reputable and mainstream sources, the odds are very good that it's a legitimate photo.
Anyway, sorry that wasn't better. You didn't see the earlier part of this because it was part of a much longer video. At the registration desk, they should have given you a resource list right there. The second one in is, there it is a link to a YouTube video that somebody who sounds like she's about 60 or 70 tells you how to do this. So it's not some 18-year-old kid with house music in the background and it's too fast. It takes its time and shows you how to do this. So I urge you to look at that and learn how to do a reverse image search. Anyway, I made Jeff do that video in part because that picture won feature photo of the year last year in Illinois. And Jeff is too shy to tell you that himself, so I forced him to do that. Resources. We've done a fair amount of work with the News Literacy Project. It's really aimed at creating curriculums for schools to teach kids how to be more discerning users of news. All right? Sorry, checking my time. But they, I've seen the one of their vice presidents who does a lot of programs like this. He came out, talked to our news staff. We were very, very impressed with that and energized. And that's really the genesis of what we're doing today. It kind of came out of that program with him. So I'm a big fan of the News Literacy Project. They come out with a weekly newsletter, a little like Snopes, but also with kind of thought-provoking questions on how kids can deal with suspect news and things like that. So go to News Literacy Project and request the SIFT, and you can get on a mailing list. Media-wise is a newer effort. We talked with some of the principals involved in that last week. They're doing kind of the same thing. It's very well funded with Google and Stanford and the Poynter Institute. Snopes, of course, I talked a little bit about that last week. I'm a big fan of Snopes because they show their homework. They show you how they figured out whether something was real or not. And contrary to popular opinion, they will debunk stuff that favors Republicans as well as Democrats. They're really in it for the truth. ExifData, data.com, will give you that metadata that we talked about before. It'll show you what lens was used in shooting a photo even. TinEye, which I've never used before, is a reverse image search, a lot like Google. Actually, I used it once. And HoaxEye, if you're on Twitter, anybody on Twitter here? I'm not a fan either. They have all sorts of nerds who debunk photos all the time. It's all photos. And of course, the ever popular Google image search. Very handy stuff. All right, so this is a check on whether Steve was right. I had Jeff write this for basically what our photo policy is. I'll just let you guys read it for a minute. You may have a bad setting on your camera. Your iPhone lens, which is the size of a pinhead, might not accurately represent what you were looking at when you saw the sunset in Hawaii. I know this. So making adjustments to reflect reality is what is permissible with our photographers, and frankly with the people who contribute photos. We have photo contests. We have people submitting photos from events. We have people submitting photos for any variety of things. And we hold them to the same standards. Not quality, mind you, but accuracy.
When photos are submitted to us by the public, we scrutinize those photos to make sure that they're genuine. Jeff sits next to me, and we were soliciting photos from a snowstorm a year or two ago, and I watched Jeff pour through these photos, and they found a photo that looked really good, and he determined that it was too good to be true and that it had been faked and it was rejected, and we used another photo. Even if we suspect it's faked or manipulated too much, we'll reject it. Sorry, but that's how we roll. That's how we roll. And this is sacrosanct. If we start publishing photos that we know have been manipulated too much or out and out faked, we lose all credibility. It reflects poorly on everything we do. People have good reason to question the reporting we do. If we'll fake a photo, we'll fake the words, right? So this is really ingrained in everybody who works at the paper. Yes, John. Hold on a sec. Pete, okay.
If I could just point out one very rare exception that we make. Occasionally, and I'd say this is very rare, but there may be a reason that we do need to manipulate a photo. For example, in the public interest. Say we have a witness to a crime, and for some reason we noticed that, say, we got the license plate in the photo or a house address that frankly might put them in jeopardy or something. We might blur that out. But if we did, we would make it obvious in the picture that it's been blurred, that it's been manipulated, and our policy is that the caption would have to address that as well.
Thank you, John. That's perfect. Yes, that is the acceptable. That's the acceptable reason to change a photo, but we make it obvious, and we tell you what we did and why. I wish I'd put we had a picture of a really horrible crash on the tollway. And we were on scene in minutes when the cops had just arrived, and it was just a horrible, mangled car. And we wanted to post it to tell people what's going on and why, you know, the tollway is closed. But we didn't want our photo to tell people that somebody clearly had died. And if you saw this, if you had seen the license plate number, just looking at your internet, and this is the lead picture on our page, you would have seen the license plate long before the cops could have told you, hey, your loved one was in a wreck. And this person was clearly going to be dead. The car was just gone. So we make those decisions. It's kind of a sensitivity issue. So thanks, John. That was a good point. All right, this gave me a lot of agita, I will tell you. The second time we launched missiles at Syria, this was last year, I was hoping for a photo. You want a photo of this happening. And it was getting late in the day. It was like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. We still hadn't gotten the photo, and one rolled in from the Associated Press. One photo. No other photo services had it. And I said, that looks kind of strange. Where did this come from? Why did only one news service get it? And so we called the Associated Press, and they said, yeah, we've been trying to get something on this, and we finally gotten something from the Russian Defense Ministry. Hello? And I kind of argued with the photo editor in New York, and I said, how can you put this out without telling people what it's from? I'm not going to use it. And he said, well, it's the government who put it out. And I said, well, it's Russia. They got skin in the game here. So, you know, I was uncomfortable using this. We ran it without. I know some newspapers, probably many newspapers used it. I didn't want to run it. Sorry if I let you down. Okay. You'll probably laugh at this, and I hope you cry at the end, okay?
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of dystopia. Thank you, and stay woke.
That should be very sobering. Anybody know that was a fake right off the front, off the top? Okay, well then my work here is done. This is months old. Yes. I don't either. That was a joke.
Is that working? Okay.
Yeah, just hold it close.
Going back to the accuracy,
Yeah.
and presenting the truth. Those two pictures from what I believe are reliable magazines, Newsweek and Time, the photos were significantly altered. why. You probably can't answer the why would they do something like that, but
Yeah.
it just
I would
makes
have to
you
guess.
so distrustful.
I would have to guess, but a lot of magazines are picked up on a great big rack with lots of other magazines, and I'm sure somebody got a little overzealous and thought, wow, this one will stand out. Now, whether it was a conscious decision up the chain, I would hope not. Just like that Hartford Courant picture, that ran in a lot of different newspapers. It was a sizable newspaper organization. There are lapses in the industry. If we find those, we lop them. The photographer in Iraq isn't covering news anymore. That was a really bad decision that destroyed his career. And I don't know what happened with the person who did the time in the Newsweek, but I would hope that they would have faced some serious repercussions. It's bad for the whole industry when somebody does something like that. You can laugh at it here, but it hurts. I appreciate it. Thank you for the question.
Is it universal ethical standard, or each newspaper has their own only standard? Like you say that we are fired if it is fake. And how about news like Washington Post or New York Times and so on, which is propaganda actually?
The Washington Post and the New York Times have both fired people for creating people out of thin air for stories. Photo, I don't know. I can only assume that that's happened, but they take swift action with people who are either plagiarists or people who create stuff. Stephen Glass, he worked for the Post or the Times? Time for the New York Times, and Janet King from the Washington Post. They both created stories out of thin air. Boom, they're gone. Yeah. Well, they were climbers. They wanted to be successful, so they wrote these great stories. Facts be damned, and they were bad actors in the journalism world, and they're not in the journalism world anymore. So, yeah, we deal with it swiftly and severely. So, all mainstream newspapers, I think, have the same basic standards. At least papers that are our size and larger. It's just what we're taught in journalism school. Play it straight, get it right. It's more important to be right than first. All that stuff. So. I get an occasional call from the advertising department. There's supposed to be a giant wall between us, but if they see something that they're a little nervous about, they'll ask me if I'm nervous about it, and I'll tell them yes, and that it doesn't run. It has happened. Yes, ma'am.
Is fake news harder to determine on TV things than a printed object that you can put a picture through, like your press?
Is it easier to detect on TV than it is in print? Oh, I don't. That's boy. You get it. You get the gold star for the tough question. I think it's easy when you have tools at your disposal, when you can actually look at the picture. Stuff that you can find on the internet is easier to fact check. What you see on TV, wow, I don't know how to answer that question. Pete, any ideas on that one? I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you.
I worked in television for 30 years.
Oh, good, you can answer.
And we have black boxes that take and manipulate the images real clearly. and they're very difficult to understand, to be able to detect whether they're real or they're fake. We really do. And
Oh.
it gets better every day.
So you can manipulate stuff very easily.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, TV is evil. All right.
And I started working about 30 years ago, so and we were able to do it then because we say so. And we take and manipulate things. We leave stuff off, add stuff in.
So this Barack Obama, Jordan Peele thing that I hope is all kind of sinking in right now, that's from last year. And you know how speedy technology is. Would you like to talk about the TED Talk? That's okay. You don't have to say his name, but you can tell us what happened.
A young PhD student, Kent, thank you. A young PhD student, all he needs is photographs of somebody. And if he has 20 photographs, he can manipulate the photographs, put different, even frown lines in, smile lines in on the photographs, and make an entire speech up from somebody. And you have no idea if it's real or not. The voice is the same. The TED Talks that explains this, I don't know, maybe you could spell the guy's name if people want to look it up, because it is absolutely terrifying. The thing about it that really got me is he was saying, isn't this wonderful that we can do this? And he has a list of ways that he thinks is going to make him money, because we're all going to buy into it.
Supasorn suajanacorn. Just like it sounds. Spell it like it sounds. That's a really good point. This was done with a guy who's got a spot-on vocal impersonation of Barack Obama, right? Well, it was really close. But now, if you have, I saw kind of an early version of what she's talking about, and they took a bunch of George W. Bush speeches and created an entirely new speech using his voice. So it is perfect. Now, the transitions between sentences might be a little bit hinky, but they're actually using W's voice and W's face to create whatever they want, as long as he's said those words or syllables. So it just keeps getting more sophisticated, and to me, that's terrifying. That stuff's hard to spot. Again, use your brain. Don't use your ears and your eyes. Use your brain. And if he's talking about Ben Carson being in the sunken places, that's something Barack Obama would say. I don't think so. Yes.
Can you address a question on the handout for last week? The fact checkers list, resources. I have 5 others that I have used, and I wonder what your opinion of those would be.
If I know about them, I'll wow, you're good. First Draft News. I have heard good stuff about them, I think. First Draft News. Who does that? Do you remember who's behind that? Okay. Rationalwiki.org. Wiki main page, I have no idea. Real or satire, that's probably a good, at least it'll give you an idea. It'll show you that somebody has looked at something you've seen. Straight dope, I don't know. That's fake. I can't vouch for.
I saw some of those.
I'm going to take a picture of this, and I'm going to check them out. Oh, thank you very much.
I was searching last week when we were pulling together that resource list.
Wow, thank you very much. A gift. Yeah.
Also, if you go to sites like that, anything that's credible will have a section that talks about, about who puts it together. So if you dig deeply enough, you usually can figure out if it's on the up and up.
If the origin of the website is Cyprus, don't trust it. Any other questions? Then I bid you good evening. Thank you.